Hi, I'm Alistair Shipley. Driven by the beliefs that everyone has something special to offer, I created Not So Average, the podcast that proves that you don't need to be in the top 1% to be truly extraordinary. Each episode spotlights everyday people from your community, the very individuals you might pass on the street. These relatable stories reveal that whether you're a jack of all trades or a niche specialist, we all have unique experiences and valuable lessons to share. Imagine if we all took a moment to realize we're all not so average. Let's get after it. Hey, Not So Average listeners, this is Alistair Shipley, and this is episode 20, an episode and a marker that I could only dream of about a couple of years ago. So this is an episode that I wanted to bring to you guys about what we've learned over the last 20 episodes of interviewing guests. As I said in, I believe, episode 15, I wanted to get in the cadence of having one-on-one interview with you guys every fifth episode or so. Just doing recaps, giving a little synopsis of what I've been learning, and a little backstory into my life. So over the last 20 episodes, we've made huge headway in terms of the guests that we were bringing on. Initially, we started off with my close friend, Evan Luft, who is a fantastic pilot and also has quite the following in the aviation space online. And then we started bringing in people like CEOs from Inspire Go. Then we had people like Zach Hartley, who are prominently found online talking about investments, and also has his drop shipping program that he does with 3D printing out of his basement. We had Olympians like Haley Daniels. We had some monumental people from my Mount Royal group. My mentor, for one, Ray DePaul, who works out of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship program at Mount Royal University. And then we had people like Mandy Balak of The Gathering and formerly Date Night. It was amazing the types of people that I was able to pull on to this small startup podcast, but it just speaks to the type of community that we have here in Calgary. It's very much a giving community, and it's also a very small community, considering we have 1.6 million people in the Calgary surrounding area. But it also highlights that we have some exceptional stories that need to continue to be shared. And that's what I plan on doing. What did we learn after 20 episodes of Not So Average and interviewing exceptional people with less than ordinary paths to success? There's 8 general trends that we found that kind of resonated with me in particular. So there was redefining success on your own terms was the first one that really stood out. Passion and excitement are a catalyst. So a lot of guests brought this up, and we'll go into it more in this episode. 3, reflections is a superpower. We live in a society right now where we don't give ourselves a lot of downtime. It's on to the next. And a lot of these high achievers were talking about how giving themselves time and reprieve to relax was huge. Number 4, surround yourself with the right people. We often hear about it. There's been that motto of birds of a feather flock together. Your 5 closest friends is what you're the sum of. Those kind of points just highlight like who you spend your time with is drastically important. The number 5 was purpose-driven work creates real impact. If you have a North Star for your organization and you can rally people behind it, it's going to make your organization goes so much further. Number 6 was reinvention is part of the journey. Like the phoenix rising from the ashes, a lot of these success stories came with failures, but the difference was for them that they kept persisting and going forward. Number 7, balance is intentional and imperfect. I think that goes without saying. And number 8 is put a lot of focus into teaching, leadership, and service of others. I want to expand on these a little bit more based off of the points that various podcast guests brought up. And that's the idea behind this podcast today is what were the 8 standouts and kind of general trends that we came across? Let's get after it. Number 1 was redefining success on your own terms. The reason why this is number one was the whole premise of this podcast was basically showcasing that success looks very different to every individual, and it's generally not a linear path, let alone success doesn't need to be indicated by you being the top 1% of the world or a billionaire or somebody, a public presence, okay? A lot of these guests, in fact, like every guest on my show, actually made a point that making it means different things to each person, but it was well beyond just wealth and fame. Ray DePaul, for example, brought up that success is not about money alone. In his instance, it was about a long marriage, happy kids, and he was very excited at that point in time too about his grandchildren as well. And then obviously if you follow his path of service, mentoring students has been a big part of his career. In fact, that's how I got started in my lines of work. He set me up for probably about 4, if not 5 of my post-secondary career choices. And then another point that he really wanted to highlight for what success meant for was choosing enough over excess. You can always pursue more, but the thing about it is there's always going to be somebody else that has more than you. So at what point are you content with what you have? And then Haley Daniels had a similar thought too when originally asked, what does success mean to you? She had brought up that she had to think about it, but she had another, I believe it was a sports coach, sports psychologist actually, that had asked her a similar question and then offered to share, do you know what success means to me? And it was that I'm content with what I have. And when you go back to Haley Daniels' story, there's a comment of, I used to think success was standing on a podium, but a lot of what her Olympic path looked like was standing up for others. And I think that's a powerful way of looking at success. Then you had people like Michael Sydoryk, and he said success is ordering anything off the menu without thinking and having time for what matters. I think that's probably the most simplistic and enjoyable way of thinking of success. You can go to any restaurant and just say, I want that, and you don't have to give it a second thought. Sure, that has to do with monetary. If you surround that with the right people too, and you don't make it a frequent occurrence, I think we can all take those opportunities and go out for a nice dinner with the right people. To summarize redefining success in your own terms, true success looks more like presence, peace, and alignment versus external recognition. And that was a nice point to come to after having some really exceptionally successful people, in my view, on this podcast. Number 2, passion and excitement are catalysts. I had to put this one in here. Michael Sydoryk, our most recent episode that we recorded, just kept bringing up how excitement is infectious and it can lead you to exactly where you need to go. So Michael Sydoryk gave a story on the podcast about how he had a point of reflection where there was somebody he was talking to that was just super excited about coins, and Michael found himself excited about coins. But then he thought to himself, like, I'm not actually into coins at all. In fact, I just was caught up in this person's excitement. And that's something that he's always pursued, like the excitement for his paintings. When Michael brought up the discussion point of him in commission paintings, he had indicated that if he can't get excited about it, it's generally not something that he moves forward with. And if you go back to that episode, excitement was the general trend in that entire podcast. Then you got people like Derek Ruckey, who's a co-founder at Inspired Go, that had originally started off in the golf wearables section after being an amateur golfer in university and turned his obsession into entrepreneurship. And that's where he got started, was just his excitement for the sport led him to pursuing a new industry wearable. And now it obviously led to a business that closed its doors. But as he said, you only fail if you stop. Everything else is just a data point. Now, if you were to talk to him about this when he was going through the shutdown of T-Link, might have been a different point. But at this day and age, if you ask him about it, the learnings that came from it have made Inspire Go a possibility for the business that it is today. And then, of course, you got Mandy Balak. If it's not a fuck yes, it's a no. And so when she said that, you could feel that excitement behind what she was saying fuck yes to was definitely there. And Mandy has a fantastic story and just huge amounts of energy. And you could tell if the energy is not behind what she wants to go after, she's not going to go after it, because there's only so much energy to give on a day-to-day basis, especially in all of the ventures that she's going after. So to recap, passion and excitement are catalysts. Basically, follow sparks, and passion fuels purpose. You hear this over and over again, follow your passion, follow your passion. Now, in some cases, it doesn't make you money. Zach Hartley mentioned that. It has to make you money if you want to make it into a career, but follow your passion. Number 3, reflection is a superpower. This I had to put near the top of the list, especially after nearly the 365 days of reflection that I've been going through with journaling and meditation and other just general mind retreats that I've been giving myself. I've been really putting a lot of time into getting to understand myself, and that is only made possible by sitting down and doing things like journaling. But people like Derek Rucky, who went through a failure with his T-Link, said that basically he used journaling as a post-mortem for his startup failure that then led to building what is now Inspired Go. Then you also have Mandy Balak, who said that she intentionally has once a month something referred to as integration days for realignment. Mandy, with her monthly integration days that she often spends with her husband, she makes it a habit of asking herself 3 questions. What did I learn this month? Where did my energy go this month? And how am I feeling? Then you had Haley Daniels with an Olympic level morning routine with mantras and journaling, which was something that you definitely have to check out. So go back and see Haley Daniels' podcast. So in summary, success is a loop. Action, reflection, intention, action again. Now, number 4, I think this goes without saying, but I loved hearing this from all of our guests. Surround yourself with the right people. I'm very lucky. This podcast allows me to do so. But even in my personal life, I have amazing people that I get to share it with. And fortunately, a lot of them say yes to actually being on this podcast as well. The power of community and mentorship came up again and again. You had Ray DePaul talk about you don't scale startups, you scale founders. Putting focus through his mentorship into the founders themselves. And you see that in the Calgary community. There's a lot of people banding together to build each other up. Then you have Derek saying you level up fastest by being the least accomplished person in the room. Little context. My university group, we refer to ourselves as the tribe. Now, some people cringe at that. I don't know how it even came to be, but we're very proud of it. There's probably about 30 of us over our graduating class of several years, but this group just constantly continues to level each other up. And it's funny because you almost get a little bit of an imposter syndrome. And when you have this conversation with others, they bring it up too. They're like, I sometimes feel like I am the dumbest person in the room. And instead of shying away from that, a lot of this group leans into it, and we'll spend hours just like diving into somebody's a subject of expertise, for example, and just learning from it. So each boat is rising with the tide, which has been probably the best part of my university experience personally. Then you have Alexandra Sangster saying, find mentors who will challenge you, feedback is a gift. So surrounding yourself with the right people, you don't always want naysayers in your corner, but you want people that want the best for you and are willing to push back and actually challenge you on your views and your opinions. Now, you're welcome to receive them any way you wish, but in Alexandra's experience, it's made her the kind of leader that she is and the founder that she is today. And she was very appreciative of them on the podcast. Summarizing the point of surrounding yourself with the right people, growth rarely happens in isolation. Build rooms that challenge you and elevate yourself. Number 5, purpose-driven work creates real impact. From conversations like gender equality and mission-first operations, this was very prevalent in the discussion points that I had with people. You obviously had people like Lisa Davis that found that there wasn't appropriate education for the type of STEM programs that she wanted, so she went after it. She had a purpose. Haley Daniels, who fought to get women's canoe into the Olympics. Then you got Alexandra, built Sarjessa around domestic violence awareness. We're not trying to save the world in one shot. We're testing what works and scaling that, essentially. You have Michael Sydoryk. If I can connect someone to an animal through its eyes, then maybe I can connect them to a cause. So a lot of his paintings have you connecting to the animal, and then in turn, when you purchase it, he's actually giving back to conservation. So he was very focused on purpose. Purpose is not just a buzzword. It really is a multiplier for your business. That's why you see a lot of these philanthropy is good for business kind of business models, or the 2-for-1 models, for example, with Tom's or Warby Parker. And then you have charitable organizations that are basically run like tech organizations. You have Charity Water that is just, if you ever get the chance to follow them on Instagram and follow their mission, people are so invested in that organization. You would think that they're one of the top luxury brands in the world, just how people follow them and brag about them every time they come into contact with people that need to know about what Charity Water's up to. Scott Harrison is probably one of my favorite founders. I hope to one day have him on here. Then we come to point number 6. Reinvention is a part of the journey. Non-linear paths, pivots, and letting go showed up very frequently in these 20 episodes with the various guests we had on here. And it constantly made me think of the Rocky Balboa quote. It's not how hard you get hit, but how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Because you had founders like Mandy Balak who lost the business and then redefined her identity and rebuilt with a deeper alignment. So that's what you're seeing with The Gathering and The Well and all of her other ventures that she has going on. And then Ray DePaul constantly mentioned, and he was, keep in mind, formerly a coder that turned into a CEO and mentor. For him, failure wasn't a red flag, it was a rite of passage. So the people that did really well in his innovation and entrepreneurship programs and then other ventures that he's been a part of was their ability to keep moving forward, putting one foot in front of the other. And then what might have seemed like an unlikely guess, but I thought his story was absolutely phenomenal because of his business acumen. And I only say unlikely guess because people didn't know that I had a culinary background before. But Mike Peugeot basically mentioned that every burnout he ever had was a turning point, not a breaking point. So that whole Phoenix rising from the ashes, every time he went through burnout, and this was a guy that was basically sleeping in the kitchen, he was working so much, he took a moment, basically reassessed, reevaluated, and always came back stronger. So reinvention isn't failure, it is evolution. Number 7, balance is intentional and imperfect. None of the guests on the podcast would ever say that they lived a fully balanced life. There was ebbs and flows and everything had its own season, but they were very intentional and mindful of what it was that they were going through. And this whole work-life balance is very difficult in the 21st century, especially for people that are trying to push the envelope and go beyond just a normal clock in, clock out job. They want to build something. Not saying that people that aren't doing the clock in, clock out are trying to build something, but these individuals that we were talking to, they were often consumed by the mission that they're after. So it's very easy for them to blend their at-home life with what they were working on. Derek Rucky said, real balance is intentional integration, not perfect compartmentalization. And I can hardly even say that word. But intention is what gives him a lot of his balance. So when I talk to him, he clocks out at either 5 or 5:30, turns off his computer, his devices, and it is deliberate father-daughter time. He goes upstairs because he works from home quite frequently. He has a meal with his partner and his child, and he enjoys the time that he has with her until she goes to bed because she is a younger child. And then afterwards, he might turn back on and do a bit more work and stuff like that, but he's very intentional that when he is presently with his family, there's nothing else that can interrupt him. Now, obviously, if you talk to him more, he'll tell you that this can change at any given moment depending on the emergencies and fires, but he's also assessed that this is a thing of importance and that he's not going to compromise on it. Then we have my favorite teacher that I'm fortunate enough to call a friend. He didn't teach me, but David Sydoryk talked about how marriage math isn't always 50-50. Some days you give 90 and they give 10, and that's okay. So his conversation on balance was around a balanced relationship with his partner and his loving wife. And he acknowledges that sometimes he's going to be giving more because she can only give so much, and then that will flip. And that is okay. It's recognizing that is a part of the season that they're in and that it's not always going to stay that way. Mandy Balak said presence and peace are KPIs. So basically setting them up as metrics. How do you measure it? Presence and peace. I'll leave that to you guys because I still got to figure that out myself, but it was definitely some words that left me wondering. So in summary of balance is intentional. Balance looks very different to every person. And I think my favorite look at work-life balance was from Jeff Bezos. Love or hate the guy, but he made a comment of work-life blend. And I think that's what a lot of the guests on the show have embodied is they blend their passions into their life and they make it work in their own unique way. Michael Sydoryk talks about how he basically works late hours of the night, or I guess extreme early mornings, right before his kid wakes up, and then he basically spends his whole day with them, and then when they go to bed, he'll do some more work afterwards. But he is up at the wee hours of the night that nobody is up at, and that's what works for him. Then we come to point number 8, teaching leadership and service. Leadership wasn't just about strategy for many of the guests on this show. There was empathy, how that led into modeling for other people, and how do you create emotional safety for others around you. One of my favorite quotes was from David Sydoryk, the teacher and sports coach. And he was telling his students, you are who you are because of your skills and your attitude, not what you know. He was basically discussing with his students that they're so much more than what they are on a test or how they show up on a test. It's all of these other attributes, their skills, their spirit, their personality. Then you got Mike Pigeot. If you want to go far, bring others with you. He put a huge emphasis over the last couple of years on the types of people that he brings into his organization. And if you ever get the chance to go to Pat and Betty restaurant, you'll see it in action. It's just a fine-tuned machine. Everybody knows their role. Everybody knows their responsibility. He gives them a space for failure. He gives them all the time in the world to teach them if they are willing to learn. And I think it makes his restaurant one of the top in Calgary, if not in Alberta. And then Ray DePaul. Leadership is about unlocking the smarts in everyone else. So Ray had said a point that I hung to, because one day I hope to be more of a mentor to others. Maybe in the tech space, maybe in something else, who knows? But he said, and I'm going to butcher this, but something along the lines of, I hope everybody has the opportunity to mentor, because you basically squeeze every iota of knowledge out of every experience because you believe that you can give it to somebody else and they'll benefit from it. So he's almost reflecting on every experience because he's looking at it from a lens of how can I give this back to others as a useful tidbit of information. So every failure that he's been through or every challenging experience, there's a learning that he's documenting. And if you ever talk to him, he's constantly pulling from these threads or these experiences that he's been through. And so that point of, I hope everybody gets to mentor, because then you're going to actually squeeze the most out of life in order to teach others, I think is hugely powerful. So summarizing, the best leaders are basically teachers, and the best teachers lead with a lot of acts of service towards others. This is the end of episode 20. Now, I know 20 episodes is chump change to some of the biggest out there, but they all started somewhere. And that, for me, is probably the most exciting part, is just knowing that maybe one day I can grow into some of these other channels. I have no ambition of being the Joe Rogans of the world and having that much status or that many viewership, but I've come to realize that Calgary has some incredible stories. Alberta's got some incredible stories. Canada has some incredible stories. And that's what I'm going to share for as long as I possibly can. Nothing gives me more joy than sit down with a guest and then the editing of the videos afterwards and then the sharing of the video, because I get to share that experience 3 times. I'm constantly smiling and I'm constantly learning. So for those that have been with me since the beginning, for those that are with me to the end of this episode in particular too, thank you so much. It means the world to me. There are some fantastic stories out there, and I can't wait to unearth them for you. This is only the beginning. So let's get after it.